Dollar. Dirt and money, no soul. Had to go and get it, ain't no time to kick it. Got a stack of flip for my foes. Dollar. Please tell me you can hear me. Don't turn your back and don't neglect me. Just let me know if you need me. Dollar. Let me watch out for my partners. Keep my money long, get my team strong. Let me run away from my problems.
Yup, what's good, original crew, man? We're back like that, Jack. Today's video, did this hiker find a portal to another dimension? Here you go. Oh, guess what I came across? I don't know how true it is. Let's go to the Ballen channel. For those who might not know, he created a post. He said, huge announcement. I know this will absolutely make your day. I'm going old school and returning to uploading up to 4 times per week on my channel, beginning the first full week of the new year. How you like that?
That's great for him. You like it?
No. I hope he go back to the old ways of like telling more
of like the type of like stories and cases.
Yeah. Like more like true stories that happen. We ain't gotta go all the way back to 1700s, 1800s. Like it's a lot of things that happen. I think he can cover and talk about, tell the story, and that might not get a spotlight.
Yeah, for you.
Hey, make sure y'all check out the links in the description box
down below.
You already know where to go if you want to first support. You gotta do it. Check out down below. Also, if you enjoyed today's video,
like it with a thumbs up.
I don't necessarily think he has to go back to doing 4 days a week. I think he can go 2, 3. Maybe like Monday. You don't want to do Mondays. I know with him, a male thinking about football. I would do. But I know he posts on Saturdays. But I would switch it to Sunday, Wednesday, and Fridays. If I was him. But, hey, that's just me. Hey, make sure you check out the list.
Didn't we just do that?
I don't know. If so, let's go.
I don't know. I thought we did. My bad.
At this point, let's go.
In South China, there is this 100-kilometer-long wilderness trail called the Mleho Trail. And at first glance, it just seems like a pretty normal, beautiful hiking trail, until you begin to research what other hikers have said about what they experienced out on that trail. Let's just say some of their experiences are genuinely terrifying. And today, I'm gonna tell you one of those experiences. It's about this man who goes solo hiking out on the Mleho Trail, and he comes in contact with something that neither he nor anybody else can explain. But before we get into that story, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place, because that's all we do, and we upload once a week. So if that's of interest to you, please offer to mail the like button's very important, time-sensitive job applications for them. But instead of mailing them, just immediately put them in the trash. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. Okay, let's get into today's story. On the morning of June 18th, 2016, a 45-year-old hiker named Zhang Shenpeng stood at the entrance to the famous Mleho's Wilderness Trail in southern China. He reached into his backpack, pulled out his phone, aimed it at the trail, and took a photo. Now, this trail was very beautiful, which is why he was taking a photo of it, but it also had a reputation for being a very dangerous trail. It was located in an area called the Saikung Peninsula, and the trail itself was about 100 kilometers long, or 62 miles. And it went through forests and mountains and streams, and the weather along this trail was very unpredictable, with sudden storms rolling in and just wreaking havoc. But Zhang was feeling very confident about this hike because he himself was an experienced hiker. While he maybe hadn't done this particular trail, he had hiked similar trails, and also the weather appeared to be holding up. However, before Zhang could even take a step onto this trail, the sky suddenly turned this dark greenish hue, and there was a loud thunderclap. I mean, basically instantly, there was this massive storm overhead. Zhang couldn't believe it. He just stood there watching as this unbelievable storm rolled in, wondering what he should do. I mean, again, he had not prepared for a storm. It was supposed to be nice out. But as he's kind of weighing whether or not he should just turn around and head back home because it was now too dangerous, the sky, just as suddenly as this all began, cleared. and it was suddenly beautiful and bright out, and the storm was gone. Now, at first, Zhang was not entirely convinced that the storm was now just magically gone, and so for a few minutes, he just stood there waiting in case it came back. But it didn't. The sky remained beautiful and clear. And so eventually, Zhang posted that photo he had taken of the trail, and he captioned it with something to the effect of, very strange weather out here, but I'm continuing my hike. And then after posting the photo, he put his phone away and began walking down the Mleho's trail. At first, as Zhang headed off into the forest, he made good time. It was warm out, but not too hot, and his pack was fairly light. And also, the views were just stunning. Every time he came to a rise on the trail, he could look out and see the waves of the South China Sea, and the air was so clear and crisp. I mean, it was a really relaxing and beautiful place to be. Certainly a big change from what he was used to, which was the noise and crowds of the city. And so Zhang just continued on his hike, stopping periodically to take more photos. But after about an hour of this hike, when things were still going really well, Zhang reached this fairly steep incline on the trail, and he began walking up it. There had been past inclines on the trail, and he had been fine. But as he began maneuvering up this particular incline, he began to feel kind of woozy. In fact, more specifically, he began to feel like the air all around him was getting really hot, like somebody was turning up the temperature all around him. And so Zhang, he stopped as he was making his way up this incline to kind of catch his breath. But as he did that, the heat just got worse and worse. He became delirious. And as he was almost towards the top of this hill, it was like he just couldn't go any further. And the world began to spin all around him. And before long, he was tumbling to the ground and blacking out. The next thing Zhang became aware of was the feeling of grass pressed up against his cheek. He was laying on the trail. So he kind of opened his eyes, he sat up for a second, he was very disoriented. He didn't know how long he had been out for. He figured it was only a couple of minutes. But as he kind of got his bearings, the first thing he noticed is the sky was now totally dark. And when he had passed out, it was broad daylight. And so he's thinking, that can't possibly be true. I can't have been here for hours. That's not possible. And so he began to think to himself like, oh, I guess another storm has rolled in. That's why the sky is so dark. It's not nighttime. But then when he reached into his bag and pulled out his phone and saw the time and saw it was 8 o'clock at night, he realized there was no storm. It really is nighttime. He had been unconscious on this trail for apparently like 12 hours. And so as Zhang just stared at his phone in disbelief, his phone began to ring, and it was his wife. And so Zhang's thinking, oh my goodness, I'm supposed to be home right now. My wife is definitely worried about me. And so pretty quickly, he kind of composed himself, even though, again, he has no idea what's happening here. And he answers the call, and as cheerful as he could, he told his wife that everything was fine. He was just running late and he would be home soon. And so she said, okay. And then after Zhang hung up with her, he put his phone back in his backpack and pulled out a flashlight. And then he stood up and kind of checked himself over for cuts and scrapes and bruises. He had no idea what condition he was in here. But after checking himself over, he seemed okay. I mean, he was still very disoriented and confused, but physically he was okay. And then again, even though he doesn't understand what's happening here, he's just thinking, okay, I gotta turn around, get back to the car, and get home as quickly as possible. And so he slung his backpack, and with his flashlight out in front of him, he just started hoofing it back down the trail in the direction of his car. Now, as Zhang walked along, he was feeling very unsettled, but he kept telling himself that, independent of whatever's happened here, he was gonna be home soon, and everything was gonna be fine. However, not long into his return trip towards his car, he began to get this unbelievably bad feeling, like something was just totally wrong here. And as he began having this feeling, he suddenly took stock of the fact that the forest he was in, which had been so alive with life and sound and everything, was now completely silent. No insects, no animals. The stream nearby was making no sound. It was like he was in a void. And it was so eerie. And he stopped and just listened. And it was like the whole world was on mute. And so Zhang, who now was starting to feel scared, just began scanning his flashlight all around him, not even sure what he was looking for. But as he did, he had another realization. Suddenly the area he was in did not look familiar at all. I mean, he had only walked maybe several paces away from where he had just fallen to the trail and passed out. But now as he looked around, it was like he was in a totally different section of the forest. I mean, he looked back where he had fallen, and even in the grass where he would have been, it was untouched. There was no impression on the ground from where he would have been laying for 12 hours, like he'd been transported somewhere else without knowing it. Now, when Zhang spoke to his wife on the phone, he was very careful not to alarm her, even though he had sort of a growing sense of panic inside of him. But now, the whole situation was sort of out of hand. He really didn't understand what was happening, and he knew he needed help. And so he reached into his backpack to pull out his phone to call for help, except when he reached into his bag, there was nothing there. His phone was gone, his supplies were gone, the bag was totally empty, even though literally minutes before it had been full. Like there was no way he just randomly lost this stuff. It had been there, and now it was gone. And so Zhang desperately looked on the ground with his flashlight, and he walked back in the direction where he believed he had fallen, even though it didn't look like the same place. He's looking all over the place like, maybe he did drop his stuff, but he didn't. It was just gone. And so now, really feeling scared, Zhang just completely lost his composure and began screaming at the top of his lungs for help. But he heard nothing in response, just silence. And then not long after that, Zhang's head began to feel heavy again, and then he sank to the ground, put his head in the dirt, and he closed his eyes. When Zhang woke up, it was bright out, and he also was now magically back at the original spot where he had passed out on that steep incline. And the first thing he did as soon as he came to is he reached into his bag, hoping that his phone and other supplies would have just materialized by now. But no, when he reached inside the bag, it was still empty. And so on the one hand, Zhang still is like, what is going on here? I don't understand what's happening. And then on the other, he was also becoming acutely aware that because he doesn't have his phone, he can't call for help. Like he's stuck out here. And so he's wondering, like, what is he gonna do here? And then it dawns on him that, it's been at least several hours since he last spoke to his wife, and she was expecting him home the night before. And so by now, certainly, because he hasn't come home, she must have called the police. And so maybe there was already a search party out here looking for him. And so suddenly feeling kind of hopeful that that was actually happening, Zhang, despite his confusion and disorientation here, just scooped up his backpack, put it on, and began walking down the trail back in the direction towards his car. And as he walked, Zhang periodically would call out, hoping that again, some searchers or other hikers were nearby who would hear him and come to his aid. But after hiking for over an hour, he still had not reached his car. The forest was still eerily silent, like everything was silent. He hadn't seen or heard anybody else. I mean, he's totally alone here. And so Zhang started to wonder if maybe his best bet was not to try to hike out of here, but instead to just stay put and wait for, hopefully, the search party, if there was one out there, to come find him, or maybe some other hiker to come find him. However, as he was considering this, he looked up ahead where the trail kind of turned, and he saw there was this pond, a pond he had not seen on the way in, but nonetheless, there was a pond basically right over there. And from his perspective, he could see kind of through the trees on the other side of the pond appeared to be a person. Zhang suddenly felt this enormous sense of relief. Here was the person who was going to help him and get him out of here. And so Zhang began walking towards this person, and as he did, he cupped his hands and he called out a hello to get this person's attention. Now, when Zhang did this, he believed this person would either, one, hear him, turn around and see what Zhang wanted, or two, they wouldn't hear him, and they would just continue to stand there with their back to him. But neither of those things happened. When Zhang called out this very hearty hello, this person just instantly began sprinting away from Zhang without even turning to look at him. They just began taking off into the trees. And Zhang, he's thinking like this is a crisis for him. He has no idea what's happening here. This is the first person he's seen. He needs them. And so instinctively, Zhang just took off running after them, calling out the whole time, trying to reassure them that he was not a threat. He didn't mean to scare them. He needs their help. And so he gets to the pond. He runs around the perimeter. He can still see this person running off into the woods. And Zhang, like he's so exhausted from the lack of water and food, he's not feeling his best, but somehow through adrenaline alone, he starts gaining on this person. And eventually he closes the distance on this person as they're weaving through the trees. And suddenly this person just stops. And they don't turn around to look at Zhang, they just stop in the middle of the woods. And Zhang, he almost barrels into them because he had been running so quickly, and
That don't make sense. Why chase after someone when you... The story ain't making sense.
Or did you like chase after them thinking that maybe they'll be able to lead you out?
But if they're running away, you're going to be like...
Yeah, I don't think, like, why am I wouldn't chase after them either, but I get that you desperate and you don't understand what's going on, and so desperation makes people do certain things.
But it still doesn't make sense. A lot of things ain't making sense.
Yeah.
too. He just stops. And he's staring at the back of this person who still has not turned around to look at him at any point. And Zhang says to them, please, I need your help. And Zhang, he's panting, he's totally out of breath. And this person who's been running at top speed the whole time, they're not out of breath. They're not even moving. They're stationary, just with their back to Zhang. And suddenly, as Zhang is staring at this person, realizing that something feels off here, the person begins to turn around to look at him. And as they do, Zhang suddenly feels this incredible sense of dread. Like he chased this person down, he needs their help, but now that they're turning around to face him, something feels wrong and he doesn't want to see him. Something's off here. And then the person fully turns around and looks at Zhang, and Zhang is suddenly so terrified of what he sees, he holds his breath and just stays there frozen to the spot, staring. He can't believe what he's looking at. This was not a person. This was some sort of shadowy figure with no face, and it was now staring directly at Zhang. And Zhang, again, he's so scared he can't move, he's holding his breath, he's just looking right back at them, and then suddenly this figure takes an aggressive step toward Zhang, and then another, and another, until suddenly they're inches away from Zhang, and Zhang is so terrified, he just closes his eyes, expecting to die at any second, and then when he opens his eyes, the figure's just gone. For about 5 minutes, Zhang just stood there, shaking in utter disbelief of what he had just experienced. I mean, this whole thing had been terrifying, but this specific interaction with this shadow figure was horrifying, and he had no idea how to process it. But at the same time, after a few minutes, Zhang's thinking to himself, I don't want to stay around here to try to figure out what's going on. I need to get out of here. And so Zhang finally, after mustering the courage, he turns to start walking back towards the pond and back up to the trail. But when he turns around, the pond isn't there anymore. It's just this endless expanse of trees. The pond should have been right there, and it's gone. And also, when Zhang took off running after this shadow figure, it was daylight. And now, it's darkness. It's total darkness. And so once again, Zhang has somehow gone to a new location and jumped through time, several hours at least, with no idea how that had even happened. And also, as he's having this realization that once again, it's like space-time has changed all around him, he starts to have that heaviness in his head, things start to swim all around him, and before long, he's fallen to the ground and he's closing his eyes. When Zhang woke up again, it was now suddenly bright out. So again, more time has passed. He was not just passed out for a minute or two, it was several hours at least. And also, Zhang was now magically laying right next to the pond that had vanished the night before after this figure had showed up. And so at this point, Zhang is seriously thinking to himself that he must have lost his mind. That's what's happening here. He's gone insane, or does he have some horrible head injury that's like causing hallucinations or something? Like, he doesn't know. But at the same time, all he can do at this point is just get up, try to get back to the trail, and try to get back to his car and get back home. That's all he can do. And so that's what he did. Zhang made his way back up to the trail and began walking down the trail in the direction that he believed was back towards his car. But after hiking for a while, things did not look any more familiar. It was like he was hiking down a brand new trail that he had never been on before. The forest continued to be eerily silent, and every time he called out for help, he got nothing in response. And then eventually, Zhang reached a section of the trail that kind of sloped down, and when he got there and he looked out ahead of him, he saw down below there was this huge cemetery. Now, Zhang had studied this entire area before coming out on this hike, and he knew there was no cemetery in the middle of the Mleho's trail. Like, this can't be here. But remember, by this point, Zhang has seen and experienced things that he cannot understand. So he doesn't even know what's real and what's not anymore. And so as he's looking at the cemetery, he told himself, this has got to be some hallucination. This can't be here. But after walking down the hill and entering the cemetery, he reached out and touched the headstones, and they were very real. This cemetery absolutely, for right now anyways, was real and right in front of him. And as he looked at the dates on these headstones, he could tell the cemetery was at least 200 years old. And so as Zhang is taking in this new information, he looks up and he sees a couple hundred meters away from him is a group of what appears to be people clustered around a grave. And for a moment, Zhang feels this unbelievable sense of relief. Here we go, there's some people here, they're visiting their relatives, they can help me. But before Zhang ran over there and asked for their help, he watched one of them sort of turn their bodies and they looked back at Zhang. And instantly Zhang's body was overcome with terror once again. because this person was not a person. This was a faceless, dark figure, just like the one he had encountered near the pond. And there was this horrible sense that this thing was looking right at him. And so horrified, Zhang just turned and ran away. That night, Zhang found himself inexplicably back at that small pond. Didn't even know how he got there, but at this point, he wasn't questioning anything, because he didn't understand any of this. And as he was next to this pond, at some point, he had that heaviness come over him, and before long, he was on the ground, closing his eyes. However, this time, as he sort of slept or became unconscious, he entered into this sort of dream state where he became aware that there were whispers all around him. Somebody or something was trying to communicate with him, and at first he couldn't tell what it was. But then he realized it was like the earth was talking to him. It was like the rocks and the nearby water were literally speaking to him. And for some reason, this felt sort of comforting, even though again, he has no idea what to make of this. And then when Zhang woke up again, it was bright out, and all of a sudden Zhang was aware that the forest was alive again. There were sounds coming from everywhere, animals, insects, there was water sounds. It was like things were back to normal. And Zhang, he also had this incredible clear-headedness that he hadn't had for the past several days. It really was like things had gone back to normal. And so Zhang stood up and he heard the sound of running water nearby, and he followed it to a stream. And so he decided he would just follow this stream right on out of the Mleho's trail. Like this was going to be the way he would get out of here. But after walking for hours and hours along the stream, he still had not found his way out. The sun was now directly overhead, beaming down on him. He was so hot, he was tired, he was moving slower and slower. His optimism was beginning to fade. And then he looked up, and just up ahead, he saw something that destroyed any of the optimism he had left. Because right up ahead were 3 more shadow figures with their back to him. It was like they were blocking his way towards freedom. And so as Zhang tensed up and prepared to turn and run back deeper into this trail that he was trying to escape, one of these shadow figures turned and they looked directly at Zhang. And when they did, everything changed. Because Zhang instantly realized this was no shadow figure. This was a real person. They had a face, and they were calling out to him saying, "Hey, do you need any help?" And Zhang was so relieved, so happy. He couldn't even say anything back. He just fell to his knees and wept tears of joy. He was finally saved. It would turn out Zhang's wife had called the police on that first night when Zhang didn't come home. And so the whole time Zhang was out in the woods over these several days, there was actually a massive search party out there looking for him. However, none of the searchers claimed to have seen or heard Zhang at any point, and Zhang did not see or hear any of the searchers. Those people at the end who finally rescued him were just random hikers that happened to see him. But somehow, despite the fact that Zhang really could not have gone very far from his car, I mean, he really didn't cover a huge distance on this trail when this whole experience began, despite that, the searchers never heard or saw Zhang at any point, and Zhang obviously never heard or saw any of them. So they're basically in the exact same area, looking for each other, but nobody sees each other. After being discovered by those 3 real people on Mleho's trail, Zhang was taken to a hospital where he was examined, and it was determined there was nothing physically wrong with him other than he had not had much to eat or drink in several days. In fact, the official explanation for what happened to Zhang was just that he was really dehydrated. However, Zhang didn't buy that explanation. And when Zhang left the hospital and got back home, he immediately began digging into the history of the Mleho's trail. And he would quickly discover that he was not the first person to have a totally wild, bizarre, borderline paranormal experience out on that trail. It would turn out the Mleho's trail cuts across a geographic line called the Sai Kung Barrier. This is an area of the Sai Kung Peninsula that is generally considered to be a portal to other dimensions. And there have been enough people to have otherworldly experiences out on this trail that loosely match what Zhang claims to have seen and experienced, that they dubbed the area this trail is in as the Bermuda Triangle of South China. And adding even more intrigue to this area is the fact that several other very experienced hikers have gone missing along this trail, and they've had huge search parties sent out for them, but they were never found. Zhang would eventually share his story of what happened to him out on the trail in a 3,500-word essay that he posted on social media. He, and many others, believe that when he first fell and collapsed on the trail, that he actually fell through the Sai Kung Barrier and entered another dimension. that for those days that he was wandering around having no idea what was happening to him, that he wasn't really in this dimension anymore. He was somewhere else. Zhang believed the only reason he was able to escape this other dimension was because on his final night in this other place, he began to hear the sounds of the rocks and the water whispering to him. He said the only reason he was able to hear that was because he had sort of accepted his fate, that here he was in this totally strange world that he couldn't understand and didn't have any real expectation to escape from. And it was that sort of resignation that he allowed himself to feel that kind of put him in touch with this dimension, and he believes that's what ultimately allowed him to come back home. Despite those who doubt him, Zhang stands by his version of events. While his time on the trail did not cause him any physical harm, to this day, he is still haunted by it.
I bet he would be, man.
Yeah, I don't think anybody would.
He never said how long he was missing, did he?
He just said several days.
Yeah, he ain't give us like
He
a
ain't give, like,
timetable.
actual.
Yeah,
Like when he was actually rescued. We know when he actually went out for the hike, but he just said several days. That is crazy. Yeah.
I don't know. That's weird though. And he had no other body injuries, no head,
Nothing.
no
Just
physical dehydration can cause something.
But he dehydrated because he had been out there several days.
Yeah. True that.
But what
yeah.
initially caused it? That's the
or did he start developing dehydration in the first place? I know he said he went to the pond. Did he get any water, drink anything while he...
But he had supplies. He had stuff in his bag. And his phone and stuff was in his bag. But it was gone. It was there one moment and then gone the next. So I don't know. It's strange. It's very strange. It is strange. Like if I came across it, I'd be like, You know what I'm saying? Like if I came across that 35-page essay.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, this is... I wouldn't put it because strange things happen when you out and...
True.
I don't never just brush things off. I know it's crazy, but I never just brush things off because you just never know what's out there. But that is a crazy story though. I'm glad he was found.
Facts.
Because it's sad that some people weren't.
But it's just crazy to me he was gone for I want to know time. How long was he really out there for?
Let's say 3. Okay, what if it's 3 days? It has to be because he went to sleep.
Also, the distance is tripping me up too, though.
I'd say 3 or 4 days.
Also, the distance, he wasn't that far from the car, so that's kind of
that's why he also feel
That's kind of. There's a couple things tripping me up. Not that I'm trying to force to understand it.
Yeah.
But I'm just tripped up a little bit, trying to
What's
understand.
tripping me up is the fact that a search party was out there the entire time. And never came.
But we have heard stories where people went missing. They were like, "Hey, I was out here the whole time," and they were like, "Yeah, they came here," but somebody was like, "Yeah, I searched that area," but they really didn't search the whole area, and the person was right there. And the person said, "I was been right here this whole time." Yeah. They were like, "Oh, well, I went in the vicinity and I looked." But I didn't necessarily go over there,
maybe.
I didn't see anything.
I don't know, maybe
things like that do happen.
Yeah,
we have heard
that. Yeah,
and for a fact we've heard that.
Yeah.
We've been like, "Oh, well, you said you searched that area. If you don't search it, don't say you searched it."
Yeah, I don't. Yeah,
it's just human error.
But I'm just in the end, I'm just glad that he was saved and rescued and no harm, physical harm.
Beyond dehydration.
Yeah. Now, mental, because that'll have me kind of...
Oh, yeah, for you, for sure.
I'll be like, what? But physically, he wasn't harmed, so that's good.
But, hey, y'all spam us up in the comments. Y'all let us know y'all thoughts about it for us in the comments down below. But, until next time, y'all know how I go, man. I do go over the dang DJ Kid. This is
Cee Reacts To Did.
We are.
Kid and Cee.
We are.
Time to kick it, got a stack of flip for my folks. Dollar. Please tell me you can hear me.